This is Ask Joe number 168. Yeah. 168. Hey everybody, I'm back. This is Joe Gilder from HomeStudioCorner.com here with another episode of the podcast. Plus, I'm trying a whole new thing, streaming this to YouTube Live. So thanks to the couple dozen brave souls who are here on this, actually the very first time I've ever streamed anything on YouTube Live, and it's actually working pretty well. So I might use this for more stuff, and maybe not just the podcast, maybe stream a show or two there. I can't see the quality from my end, but from what I'm hearing from the folks in the chat, they can hear it okay. I guess it doesn't sound awful, and I'll take it. So if this is your first time listening to the podcast, thanks. I'm glad you're here. Should be a fun show for you today. I try to put these out at least once a week. Some weeks there's 2 or 3. Some weeks there's none. This week there's probably going to be 1. But I want to give you an update on the most recent fun thing that I did, which is Audio Bloggers Live. I'll talk about that in just a second, but I want to connect with you. I sent an email out to my email list yesterday or the day before, and I want to mention it again here on the podcast. I'm all over the place social media-wise. There was a period there where I wasn't really involved on social media at all, but I am now, and I want to connect with you. So I'm putting out content on mainly Facebook, Twitter, and Snapchat. And those are kind of the big 3 for me right now. There's also an app called Anchor, which is a really cool app where you post up to 2-minute sort of mini podcasts. And then you can reply to other people's podcasts via audio. So if I ask a question, you can literally record yourself answering the question. If you're an audio person, which you probably are, it's a cool little app to check out. So my handle on all those platforms is Joe Gilder Music. Come say hi. Interact with me. I would love it. Okay, so I just got back. This past weekend was an event called Audio Bloggers Live, which was put together entirely by my friend Ronan Chris Murphy, who lives out in LA, who's a fantastic engineer, been doing this for years. You may have heard of his show, Ronan's Recording Show. He also runs Recording Boot Camp, which is they're different. I think they're like a week-long boot camp style event at his studio in LA. Great guy, really fun. I've interviewed him before, but I've never met him in real life. So he invited me and Ian Shepherd, one of my favorite people of all time who lives in the UK, and Graham Cochran, who of course you know, to come out and do this event. And so we were kind of the 4 headliners of the event. And Ian Shepherd flew all the way from England. I got to meet him in person for the first time, which was insane. And we hung out. We did this one-day event at a cool, like old-school movie theater in Santa Monica. And then we each did a talk, and we had panels of different professional mastering engineers, people from the world of music licensing and music placement for TV, video, film. And then a couple of big-name mix engineers like Bob Clearmountain, Mick Gazowski, and Dylan Dresdo. So it was a really cool event, and I had a blast. We had a couple hundred people show up, and a lot of people that I know through the interwebs, and now I got to meet a few of you in person. So it was amazing. I hope to do more in-person events because it's really nice to meet up with you. But before I jump into your questions for the podcast today, I want to talk a little bit about some of my takeaways from the event, because obviously I was there as a presenter, and I believe my video, I actually used Periscope to stream my presentation, which is about 20 minutes, and I hope to get that posted up on YouTube here sometime this week or next week. But so you'll have that. But I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about what my takeaways were, because I was one of the speakers, one of the presenters, but I was also there to learn and to hear from all these awesome people, and to learn and to glean from their awesome, amazing wisdom. So I've not put together a list. This isn't organized, just kind of off the top of my head, things that I'm walking away from thinking more about. One of the things is from a panel that I led. I sat down with 3 gentlemen from varying levels of music placement. So there was a music supervisor who picks the music that goes into shows like the show Girls on HBO, and a couple other shows. They've all had placements in shows like The Walking Dead and Better Call Saul, and not only just AMC shows. But it was these 3 guys. One was the founder of Taxi. So Michael founded the company Taxi that kind of connects independent musicians with placement opportunities in the video, TV world, movie world. And then a guy named Bob Mayer who runs Black Toast Music. It's just kind of a publishing company where he partners directly one-on-one with musicians and artists, and they split any placements that happen. The royalties off of that get split. So anyway, there were 3 varying levels of how to get into the business, and it was a really interesting panel because I hadn't thought, if you had asked me, hey, how do I get my stuff placed in TV or film, I would have no idea, literally no idea. And now I feel like I have at least a better idea of what's involved. And so it seems to me like there are a couple ways to do that. Obviously, you have to, the biggest takeaway for me, and something I pointed out to the audience, was you have no chance of getting your music placed in a movie or a TV show and making potentially thousands of dollars. No chance of doing that if you never finish a song, right? Also, slim chance if you only ever finish one song every 10 years. A lot of these people who are on there are prolific. They're always releasing music, right? And it goes without saying, but I think it also doesn't go without saying, because we need to be reminded, oh yeah, this is about using our music. So we think about music in terms of, I'm going to release music for my audience and sell it, and then maybe get picked up, and maybe something happens down the line with major label distribution and things like that, which is great. But there's also some big opportunities and big money still in the TV and film industry, because there are still a lot of advertisers willing to pay a lot of money to be on those shows. So there's bigger budgets there, unlike in the strictly music industry. So it's a pretty cool place to place some bets if you have the inclination to do so. So the idea is you can sign up for services like Taxi, which is a monthly membership, I believe. Don't know how much it is. I need to go research that more. It's part of what I want to do, is research that, where you basically, they know you, they know your songs, and when they have a request come through from the music director of a big TV show or an upcoming movie, they'll say, we're looking for this kind of music. And then Taxi members will submit stuff, and they'll kind of sift through them and pick a few to submit that might get chosen. Or you can partner directly with a publishing company that does this, like Bob Mayer's company at Black Toast Music, where you're a partner with them. They're advocating for you with the different music supervisors at different TV shows and movies, and they're picking stuff out of their catalog. The difference there is you are splitting your commission with them, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. It just means that they get paid when you get paid, and that's the benefit there. Whereas Taxi just gets paid through your membership dues. You get the deal. They're kind of a middleman service in the sense that they introduce you and give you an opportunity to get your music heard and placed in various places. And then the music supervisor, which was in this instance was a guy named Jonathan Leahy, really cool dude. If he finds your music, happens to find it somewhere, or happens to come across your music and thinks it would be a good fit for a particular show or a particular spot they're looking for, then he can obviously contact you as well. So the idea was there are lots of ways to put yourself in a good position to be chosen, but then there's also opportunities for taking your music and making it work harder for you. What I mean is, and I've been really bad about this, is I've finished several albums in the last few years, or EPs and albums. Last year I released an album and an EP, and none of those I've gone through and bothered to print or export the instrumental versions of the song, or to print out all the stems of those. So if someone came to me and said, hey, we want to use this song, but we really don't need all the lyrics. We just want the lyric of that one chorus, but then we need 2 minutes of music underneath it before that chorus comes in. Let's say there's a dialogue scene and it's the end of the movie. They want just music for the dialogue, and then when the end of the movie comes, they want to bring in the vocal and the actual full track. Well, guess what? If you don't have that ready for them, sometimes they need it right now, and you've got to go find the session and open it up and hope that everything still works and that you can export the instrumental. You've lost the gig. And they talked about how often that happens, especially if it's a song you did 5 years ago. For me, for example, I don't use Pro Tools anymore. So any projects that I did in Pro Tools are kind of, you can either get the full mix or that's it. I don't have any other options for you. So they talked about when you're finishing your music, go ahead and do a mix without the vocal, a mix, and then also export all the stems so they can say, hey, we'd love to have this section with just drums and bass, and then come into the full band thing. If you have all the stems in actual WAV files that you've saved onto a hard drive and in different online places, then it doesn't matter what system they're using 20 years from now, they could use your song. So it's about setting yourself up for success and putting yourself in the right position to potentially be chosen, but then also making sure the files and the audio and the music itself is in a format and is laid out in such a way that actually could be used. And that's really cool. And again, there's lots more questions than I have answers, but that was a big takeaway for me. Another big takeaway was there was one panel with Bob Clearmountain, who's mixed. You can go look at his discography. He's mixed everything, but notably Springsteen, a lot of his records. And I can't remember the rest, but just tons and tons. And then on stage with him was a guy named Dylan Dresdo, who has won Grammys mixing like Black Eyed Peas. So they mix a little bit different music, obviously, but they also have completely different mixing approaches. One guy, Bob Clearmountain, still runs everything through a 72-channel modded SSL board with I asked him about the automation that he uses on there. He's got the automation computer on the SSL that lets him ride faders, and that software was last updated in, I think he said, 1995. So he is working on a dinosaur that's working, but that's his approach. That's his system. He has just tons and tons of outboard gear that he runs vocals through this chain of, an LA2A compressor into a Massenburg EQ or something. I don't know what they were, but that's his workflow, and it works really well, and he gets fantastic mixes. Dylan, sitting right next to him, also winning Grammy Awards, is all in the box. He's using all plugins and software and getting great results. And to me, that was just such an example of two of the complete extremes of what you can do in the studio. You can be all hardware, you can be all software, you can be a combination of both, and both of them are winning Grammys, and both of them do fantastic work. It kind of puts a stop to any of those debates because there's just literally no debate you can have that says you have to use this or that. It's all about who's using the tools, how they're using it, and the results they're getting. That was kind of a common theme throughout the weekend. You had mastering engineers who disagreed on delivery standards or on approaches to mastering or on this or that. And there were so many things like that. And it all came down to personal taste and just doing good work. You can do good work with all sorts of different tools. And to me, that was encouraging. It kind of reaffirmed the stuff that I'm telling you all the time on this podcast. Just focus on making music, and the rest of it'll come together. All right, let's go to the questions. Boom. All right, I'm going to take a few questions from all over the place today. But first, I'll get a few from the folks in the stream over here on the YouTube. Let me grab a couple of those. Lane Studios says, I'm curious, what mic are you using for this stream? I'm watching via phone, and I can't really tell by looking. Well, if you were on the computer, you couldn't see either because the name of it's on this side. This is a Mini K47 from Roswell Audio. It's a microphone company started by my friend Matt McGlynn over at recordinghacks.com. And really cool mic. He sent me one to review, and I've refused to send it back because I like it so much. I actually need to get with him and pay him and do a proper review of this. But it's a really cool mic. I've used it on all the vocals for my EP Free. We're done on this microphone. The podcast has been on this microphone for months now. Funny story. I usually use the SM7B from Shure for all my voiceover stuff. A friend of mine borrowed it for a recording session, and just hasn't given it back. And so I had to do a podcast the week that he borrowed it, so I slapped up this bad boy. This is actually the pop filter, the windscreen foamy deal for the SM7. I just stuck it over the top, and that was that. And I've been using it ever since. I really should get my mic back from him because it's a good mic too. But this is a fantastic mic. Works really well. Someone else in the stream was asking why I use a pop filter on a podcasting mic, because I don't want it to pop. Same reason you do anything with a pop filter. Now, I could use one of the big circle ones, but then I can't see the screen, right? So it kind of isn't super helpful. So I use a foam one that's really thick, and I have it a little bit below my mouth, a little bit to the side, so I can see the screen completely, but I still have the microphone close enough to give me that nice, deep sound. There you go. Good question. Excuse me. The Glitch is the Grain asks, Joe, have you ever had a song that you wrote that you like so much but have no idea whatsoever as to how to arrange it? How do you get through this? That's a really great question. I've have songs that I love all the time and songs that I have no idea what I'm going to do all the time. So what I do is I don't have that producer's brain that hears a song and immediately jumps in and says, I know exactly what I want to do. I know exactly what every instrument I'm going to use is going to be. I know all the tones I'm going to have. I have it completely mapped out in my head. I'm just not like that. I have a rough idea, and I might have a few specific things, but it's not nearly as spelled out as you might think, or as other producers are. So for me, it's a matter of settling on at least the arrangement of the song and the tempo and start recording and trying things out. So if that means I need to live with it for a while before I actually lay down drums, great. Or maybe it means I really decide on the tempo and the arrangement, and then the drummer brings his own creativity to it, and that takes it in a different direction, usually a better direction. But for me, it's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of literally just trying things and seeing what sticks. It's part of the fun of everything, part of the fun of studio work. Baron Matthews says, any advice on useful connections to make or outlets to contact to promote a new EP release, blogs, etc.? In other words, any advice to help ensure a fruitful and successful album launch? You know, I'm not the best person to ask about this because I don't do a good job actually building up buzz and releasing and launching my own albums. So that's part of why I'm moving towards this road to the Ryman thing, becoming much more focused on music as a musician rather than just creating music and putting it out there and hoping somebody gets it. I mean, I've got a big audience with Home Studio Corner, and even then, I rarely say, hey, here's a new album, go buy it. I might send out one email, and then I don't do anything else. So is the solution for me to blast you with tons of emails about my album? Probably not. But there are, I think that what you're asking is the right question, advice on making useful connections. I think in anything you're doing, whatever business it's in, whether it's selling albums or selling soap, you have to make connections. And you have to find people who have audiences or who have some level of influence and connect with them, however that means. So usually that means if I'm going to release an album in October of this year, which is right now the plan, I need to start contacting and connecting with musicians now, not saying, hey, I'm going to need you to promote for my album, but saying, hey, I heard I heard your latest album. It sounds great. I'd love to review it on my website or on my Twitter feed or on my Facebook feed, and would love to give away a couple copies to my followers if you're okay with that, or find ways to offer value to them, even if it's smaller value, the effort there, and doing a review of their album or something like that and publishing that can go a long way and can be a way of creating value for them that you then turn around and when your album does come out, you can ask for help. Say, hey, would you mind promoting my album to your followers if it's a good fit and things like that. So if you're waiting until the album's out, then you become that guy who says, hey, I got an album, would you do me a favor? But if you're constantly in those relationships and constantly creating value and being helpful to other people, then you have more of a right to ask for that. Similar to Home Studio Corner, I do these free podcasts, free videos, all the social media stuff where I'm trying to create value. And then I'm also going to ask you, hey, would you buy would you buy one of my products or sign up for one of my memberships or something like that? And the majority of people won't. It's going to be a percentage that will say, hey, you know what? Yeah, that sounds valuable to me. But if I'm not creating value at all, and I just came on the scene saying, hey, buy my stuff without actually putting any value out there, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation because you would have never heard of me, because I would just be the guy who's saying, hey, buy my stuff, and not actually giving any value. It's all about value exchange. It's all about value exchange. Lane Studios says, I know this is a subjective question, but for yourself generally, do you use preamps on vocals, or do you prefer to handle tone in post? I prefer to do everything I possibly can while recording. So I do have a couple of external preamps that I use. For example, right now I've got a bunch of PreSonus ones. The PreSonus ADL 600, PreSonus ADL 700, PreSonus Eureka, which is what I'm going through right now. Those are my preamps that I use. But that's not to say if I wanted to just use the stock preamps on my interface that they couldn't get a good tone. It's just these are nice tube preamps and a nice transformer preamp. They do sound quite nice. And because they do sound quite nice, I like to use them. Kind of like, could Eric Clapton do a great album through a $100 guitar amp? Probably. Would he have a better chance of doing a great album through a great amp? Yeah. So I don't want to come across as saying gear doesn't matter at all, but it's more minimal part of the equation. If I could give you a killer performance with just one microphone, me and a guitar, if I get in that spot and I'm performing something amazing and the guitar captures it adequately, great. Versus the perfectly placed microphone with a perfectly chosen microphone preamp that records a perfectly mediocre performance of a bad song. There's just more variables than we like to admit there are, if that makes sense. Okay, let me see. I had some questions over in Facebook. If you're not connected with me over there, you can find me at facebook.com/Joe Gilder Music. But let's see what questions go away. I opened the wrong thing. Let's see what questions we have over there. This is from Domagoj Kos, who says, hi, Joe. You can read my name as Dom. Sorry, Dom. I butchered it, and then I read Dom. It says, how would you go around mixing guitars recorded with too much reverb? It's surf music, so there's no such thing as too much reverb, but still, sometimes you need to tame it somehow. Really good question. You're right. Surf guitar absolutely tends to have a lot of reverb in it. That's just the thing. Big old spring reverb going to town. There's not much you can do, to be completely honest. You can try to EQ maybe some higher frequencies out that may tame it. If the guitar is stereo, which I doubt it is, you could try making it mono, which might make the reverb hide a little bit. But ultimately, this is one of the downsides of trying to get everything right at the source. Sometimes you overdo it. And the only solution is to either live with it or to re-record. So I'm not one to say you should always record guitars with a dry, direct signal that you can use for reamping, because I think leaving those options open tends to lead to a lot of time wasting and lack of decision making. But there's only so much you can do after the fact, and I think you're probably running into that right now. Eric Hernandez says, I struggle using Studio One's stock limiter. I always seem to be getting lots of compression, even though there is no visible gain reduction on the meter. Is there something about using this plugin that I'm not understanding? I don't know. I've experienced that when I first upgraded to version 3, Eric. It seems like there was a lot of limiting happening and the meter wasn't working. I would check to make sure you're on the most up-to-date version. It could have been a bug in the meter that was causing that to happen. Good question. Sorry, I wish I had more of an answer for you, but I'm guessing it might just not be up to date and has a little bug there. David's asking the advantage of using VCAs over buses, because PreSonus Studio One just introduced VCAs into their workflow. I'll be 100% honest with you, David, and David's a longtime VIP member. I don't know. All I know is VCAs, voltage-controlled amplifiers is what it stands for, is the idea of, if you've ever used mute groups where you press one mute button and it mutes a bunch of tracks, it's that idea. And so it's the idea of one fader controlling the faders of any number of tracks grouped together. I don't quite see the point, for me personally, especially the way I like to mix everything through buses, but I don't quite see why I would need that. Now, it's mostly out of ignorance because I've never really used them in the real world, so I'm going to play with them and try them more, but in my opinion, I I tend to, if I want to use one fader to control multiple tracks, I tend to do that with a bus anyway, because I'm going to put an EQ and a compressor on that bus anyway. So the idea of also running it through a fader, but the fader just controls the level, I can't think of an application where I would do that. So I don't know, but it's worth exploring. If you use Studio One version 3 and you got the latest 3.2 update, VCAs are a new deal there, and I plan on trying it. I just haven't yet. So that's all I got for you. Sorry. Next question is from Timmy Fasano. Says, what is your method to taming very harsh cymbals in a mix? It's a great question. The biggest thing is low pass filter. A lot of times, simply putting a low pass filter on the top end of the cymbals allows you, that's a high cut filter, allows you to roll them back and kind of find that sweet spot. The other thing is potentially you just need to turn them down and have a less overhead heavy mix. All right, that's it for me this week. Thanks for watching. See ya.